It isn't published yet. Norton saw it. And Dorothy liked it. Well, Dorothy asked me to do it. I got kind of scared. It's kind of like the time I had to make a good effort for Alex Roberts, who owns Restaurant Alma. It was kind of like that. Yeah, I guess it is. I guess I have to stand right there. No. You're old. No.
Let it be a gentleman.
I was going to tell you, this is an
We have to talk more about it.
All right, everybody, I think it's time we get going. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. So great to see such a crowd in our store. We're so happy to be back with these in-person events. Woo! I know, right? Before we get started with Dave, just a couple of housekeeping things. So tonight you'll be hearing from Dave Nimmer. Many of you seem very familiar, which is great. We're going to hear from Dave, and then there will be time for a little Q&A at the end of the session, and then I will be scooping Dave away pretty immediately after. We'll head to the front of the store where he will be signing copies of the book for you all. You're welcome to mingle here or go up, have a little more one-on-one chat with him, figure out the rest of the evening. If you do buy a book here this evening, you are not only supporting a wonderful local author, but also a small independent-owned bookstore. So we really appreciate that, and thank you for doing that, and also just for showing up tonight. It is such a pleasure to have you all. And just a quick reminder that face masks are not required. See most people masked up, but they are encouraged. If you don't have one but need one, we do have a box up at the front there. So thank you so much. And with that, all that out of the way, please allow me to introduce Dave Nimmer, who was born and raised in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin and moved to Minnesota in 1963, where he worked as a reporter and a managing editor for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Became a reporter and assistant news director at the WCCO television, and taught journalism at the University of St. Thomas for 11 years. Now retired, Nimmer lives in Oakdale, Minnesota. He is an active volunteer with the Visitation Monastery of North Minneapolis and the North 4 program of Emerge, a nonprofit involved with workforce training and community development in Minneapolis. In his spare time, Nim likes to hike, fish, and do yard work for his friend and partner at her home in Hudson, Wisconsin. Among the items he carries around are an AARP card, a fishing license, and a lifetime pass to America's national parks. So please join me in welcoming Dave Nimmer.
The hard part of this is that you all know me, and it's a little embarrassing to be up here. But what the hell, I enjoyed writing the short stories. And I'm thinking that with this group, and I know that that's true with this group, we all got short stories. And most of the people in this room made their living telling stories. And some of those stories about others are memorable. And I think that's the only way I can measure life. I was married to a woman who was just a really fine one, and I wrote about her. And she found her spiritual program in black holes and string theory. And I think there's a real opportunity to look at that. But I gotta have a short story. You gotta tell me a short story about how it was. I haven't got the stuff to write a novel. I can't read many of the books that Shelby consumes in a week. And I have to know some kind of mark about where I've been and where I'm going. And short stories best tell me that. So thank you for coming. I hope that you could relate to most of these stories because they're about growing older. They're about sustaining losses, about becoming aware of your own stuff in life. I call them defects of character. The Roman Catholics among us can call them sins. I prefer defects of character. And also the kind of opportunities that come with growing older. I can now tell people that I really don't water ski. Thank you. And I don't feel as though I'm walking on eggs as much. And part of that has been due to a good AA group in Afton called the River Rats. And kind of an examination of one doing life one day at a time. Tell the truth. Serve others. And kind of figure out that you're not the center of the universe. The stories in the book are not prescriptive at all. But I hope you recognize them. It took me 60 years to figure it out, but I am not damn unique. I'm just a member of the herd, and always have been. So if you can't find part of yourself in one of these stories, then that's your problem. And the other one I want to know, and I'm sure that a lot of you are here are doing this. I appreciate you all for coming. I've recognized all of your faces, all of you, even Nordling behind a mask. And noting that Will Wallace is sitting over here in the corner of the room coming from the north side. So I appreciate the fact you're here. Some of you were former students. Some of you shared space in the newsroom at the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. And some of you shared my life at the WCCO television and the University of St. Thomas. The questions that I'm dealing with are existential. They have no answer. I mean, this part of life is, why am I here? What the hell am I supposed to be doing? And how am I supposed to be doing it? And to deal with the problem, is this high enough? Is this long enough? Is this far enough? Does anybody see me? And the answer to that question is no, they don't have to see you anymore. And I've learned a couple of things. This part of life's a spiritual journey. I'm not sure it's religious. I can't identify with the Presbyterian Church or the Catholic Church, but I can identify with the nuns of the North Side. I mean, these women kick some serious ass, and they're living at 1615 Fremont Avenue North, and they're still there. And I look at them and I'm thinking, Lord, are you kidding me? Or sometimes you go to a meeting and you look around the table and you think, do you believe in miracles? Half the people sitting around that table shouldn't be alive. And not only shouldn't they be alive, but they're smiling on this given day. And for coming tonight, I wanted to say we're giving away a gift. Linda McDonald, who's sitting in the front row, is married to Steve Brandt, who was recently elected to the Minneapolis Board of Estimate and Taxation. Brandt won, I think, a majority of the vote, and finished first in the race. And Brandt and Linda McDonald are given 4 free tickets to the inaugural ball for the Board of Estimate and Taxation. It's going to be held at 10:30 at night at the CC Tap at 26 in Linden. And you're not allowed to bring weapons. So that's a gift. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading the stories. What the hell? You can do that yourself. But there are 2 that stick to my mind, and one has some humor in it, and the humor has to do with guy stuff more than anything else. And it was on a fishing trip to Pickerel Arm, Ontario, and we've been going on that fishing trip for 20 years. We started out with 8 guys, and then we got down to 5 guys, and we were now down on the last trip to 3 guys. But on one of those trips, I contracted Bell's palsy, And I could tell the day before because you came in and your eye didn't close. And I got up in the morning and my mouth was like this. And I looked in the bathroom mirror and I could see my mouth like this. And I thought, Jesus, I wonder whether I've had a stroke. But I could move my hands and my arms and I could talk. But my mouth was like this. So I walked out into the kitchen and there were 5 guys sitting around the table and we were about to eat breakfast and nobody said anything to me. And I thought, well, Jesus, I must be imagining this. I can't look like this or like I think I look and nobody would say a frickin' thing. So we went and had breakfast, but I remember that the coffee was dribbling down my chin onto my, and still nobody said anything. And the guy said, let's go fishing. So we went out and we went on a boat and I fished and it was half-hearted. And we pulled up at shore lunch and we brought sandwiches and we bought Coke and coffee to drink. And I opened a can of root beer and we'd all pulled up boats on a rock. And I opened a can of Coke and I poured half of it down the front of my shirt. And Hanberg walked over to me and he said, pardon me, but what the fuck's wrong with your face? I said, so you've noticed. He said, well, yeah, Jesus, it looks like you had a stroke. So we decided that we would go in, and I called my personal family physician, and she said, you might have had a stroke, but I suspect it's Bell's palsy. Huh. So you ought to go into a hospital, and the nearest one was Sioux Lookout. We passed that up for Dryden, Ontario, and a buddy and I took me to Dryden, and I got a little story about that. My old high school friend Bob Lederer drove me to Dryden. On the way, I told him, and I thought I was being pretty stoic and serene, that I could cope with whatever it turned out I had. If the paralysis was permanent, I'd be okay, I said. He said, that's nice because you look like shit. I was surprised at how calm I was, but I wasn't doing television news anymore. I was retired. I could walk. I could talk. If I couldn't drink from a glass, I'd sip through a straw. Of course, I hadn't looked at my face lately. When I got to the Dryden Hospital, they checked me out right away. It's single-payer, government-run health care. The doctor who saw me was on vacation from Winnipeg, moonlighting that day in the emergency room. He checked my heart and breathing with a stethoscope, took my pulse, and looked into my eyes. Then he asked me how the fishing was, and for the next 5 minutes we talked about water, waves, and walleyes. Finally, the doc asked me to stretch out my arms in front of me, palms up. He put his hands over mine, push up, now push down, push out, push in, all against the resistance from his hands. The whole procedure took no more than a couple of minutes. You got Bell's palsy, he said, and he wrote a prescription for a steroid to reduce the nerve swelling. He also gave me a patch to cover the eye where the lid didn't close. He said the steroid might help a little, but time was my best ally. Well, shouldn't I have more tests, I asked. He said, yeah, if you're in the United States, you would have, said matter-of-factly. They would have given you an MRI and billed the insurance company for $7,500. The chances are 99 out of 100 you got Bell's palsy. On our way out of the hospital, I checked out the nightly news on a television set in the visitors' lounge. And any residual feeling of self-pity I might have been harboring evaporated as we watched the CBC report on the death and destruction visited on New Orleans by Hurricane Katrina while we'd been out fishing. Back at the camp in the cabin, we agreed I'd stay and finish the fishing trip. I was wearing the eye patch, had the steroid pills in my pocket, and felt a little bit better about my prospects. Tomorrow was another day, and maybe my luck would change. I was ready for supper, but before I could sit down, Hanberg looked at me from across the table. Nim, he said, sounding sympathetic, I've been thinking, if your face doesn't clear up in a week or so, I think you should find a Bell's palsy support group. And he paused. Then he continued, see if you can hook up with a woman who's afflicted on the other side of her face. And you can take her to the Bell's palsy ball. The guys tried not to laugh, but they couldn't help themselves. I tried to smile, but I couldn't move my lips. The other one was one that I thought demonstrated our growth as men. And that was a trip that Shelby and I took to Oregon to see Rod Sando, who former DNR commissioner, a stoic Norwegian who rarely told a joke and was pretty tart and curt. He was also a science scholar, so he and Shelby spent a lot of time talking about environmental science and climate change. And it was the next best thing for me of listening to talking books, because I could just sit just matter-of-factly in that truck while the two of them were talking. And I took a fade when they got to the null hypothesis. I thought, for Christ's sake, we're on a fishing trip. We're talking about the null hypothesis. And looking at me every once in a while in a matter-of-fact way to see whether I'm at least halfway following the conversation. Well, we went out and we caught we caught a couple of salmon. No, we caught one salmon. And the guy caught some Dungeness crabs. And we had a good trip. We ate good meals. And the next day, Shelby made breakfast. And of course, being Shelby, he made hollandaise sauce from scratch. And he kept us surprised, as he goes moment for moment. And of course, I washed the dishes. I know my place. And on the last day, we headed back from the Oregon coast to along the Wilderness Road, along the canyon of the Rogue River, and heading to I-5, Interstate 5, heading back to Portland. And on the way back, we hadn't had breakfast. We were going to look for a place to eat. And the only town between the Oregon coast and I-5 on this stretch of the road, along the road, was Agnes, Oregon. And we decided we'd stop in Agnes. And when we got to Agnes, we found that it wasn't a town. There was no bar and grill. There was no cafe. There was no nothing in Agnes except a sign that said Agnes. And there was another sign though that talked about an old fishing lodge. And we thought, well, maybe, but the sign was hanging askew on a post, and we thought, well, maybe there would be, maybe they might still be open. And so we followed the road, and we followed it down a gravel road past a grass landing strip, and we found this old lodge. It was about a quarter of a mile down a gravel road past a grass landing strip. The first look at the place took me back about 60 years. When I was a kid, my family often went fishing in northern Wisconsin, and we stopped for dinner on the way home at a lodge on the Wolf River. It was home to wealthy fly fishermen who stayed in comfy rooms, drifted flies over slick river runs, and returned back at the end of the day for a gourmet meal, followed by a glass of brandy, a cup of coffee, and I suspect a fine cigar. The lodge I was now standing in front of was, in fact, completed about 1912. It was a natural stopping place for people on their way from the Oregon coast to the railroad station. Prospectors, trappers, and fishermen stayed at the lodge and made the town of Agnes their headquarters for mail and provisions. The lodge was expanded in the 50s and 60s to accommodate guests brought up the river by jet boats. And until a few years ago, it provided lunch for adventurers taking rafting trips down the river. When we pulled up and parked in front, ours was the only car. I wasn't sure the place was open until we tried the front door. It opened and I walked in. The main lodge had a sitting room, hardwood floors, an upright piano, and a front desk with a guest registry. Some of the cabins around the lodge had names, all had numbers, and some had curtains and a stove. The dining room had long tables covered with red gingham tablecloths. They were empty, save for a trio sitting at the end of one. They'd just finished breakfast. Sando, Shelby, and I were standing behind them when the owner-operator, A sixth-generation family member, I later learned, walked up. We asked about breakfast. She said she could make some French toast, but it'd take about 25 minutes. However, lunch was ready right away if we'd settle for cold fried chicken, fresh biscuits, coleslaw, iced lemonade, and hot coffee. Yeah, that'll do, we said. And we were eating in fewer than 10 minutes. The food was fine. The waitress who served it was very fine, quick and efficient, solicitous and generous. As she cleared the table, she spotted a tattoo on Shelby's wrist. An Army insignia, she asked? No, I said, my wife's name. But I was in the Air Force. She said her son had been in the Marine Corps, serving 2 tours in Iraq as a chopper mechanic. She was obviously proud of his service and subsequent college education. But he came back changed, she said, and estranged from her. She'd never seen her 2 young grandchildren. She started to cry as she recalled that in her family tradition, the children always came to see the parents, not the case with her son. She apologized for her tears, and we told her it was okay. We told her we were no strangers to pain. Sando gently suggested that perhaps she ought to initiate the visit, and Shelby allowed us how he thought she probably wasn't part of the problem, but could be part of the solution. I gave her a hug. She thanked us for listening, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and cleared the dishes. We paid the bill, left a tip, and on the way out, Shelby left another 20 with the owner to give to our waitress. He said to tell her this was a down payment on a plane ticket to go see her son. She'd be happy to, she said, and then we asked her to take a picture of the 3 of us in front of her lodge. For some reason, we sensed this was a moment worth preserving. We took the picture, got in Sando's truck, and headed down the gravel road to I-5 and on to Portland. For the next 15 or 20 minutes, we rode in silence, just trying to process what had happened. The gift we'd been given was the sense that we could be trusted, and we were left feeling a little wiser than we used to be. We listened better, talked less, and shared more. We gave suggestions, not directives. When Sando brought up a Bob Dylan track on the truck stereo, I was put in mind of the lyrics to his It's All Right, Ma. You lose yourself, you reappear, you suddenly find out you've got nothing to fear. Alone you stand with nobody near, with a trembling voice unclear, startles your sleeping ears to hear that somebody thinks they really found you. As we rolled later that day along the road in the afternoon sun, it was clear that what we paid for and what we got was a hell of a lot more than lunch. I think there's one error there. I think Shelby might have left her more. It would have been a 50. I'm not sure. But when I was writing it, I thought, well, you know, it's humility that we're all seeking, so let's make it a 20. I got to tell you, I'm so grateful you're all here tonight. Jesus, what a great Christmas gift. Screw it. Have a good time. Thanks for coming. I know it's a cold night in November, and I know what it takes to come out. And I got stories about every one of you. So thank you very much. Anybody got any questions? I can't imagine.
Alrighty, we're going to head to the front of the store. We do have a few copies for sale. Unfortunately, we did not foresee this amazing turnout. So if you do not get a physical copy, we can special order them for you. So just talk to somebody at the register. Not so much.
That's great. No, I want to turn on my Christmas lights for you to see. I want to pretty some stuff out of the car. I can't say this.
That's great, but I was looking for the results of that. I can't, I couldn't figure out, it seemed like you had enough.
No. No, you can't.
Anyway, you want.
Yeah, I like it too.
They will. So you don't start with January.
Right. I said, that's great.
You know my parents.
You need to do some more?